the infrastructure for innovation concerning strong research and innovation milieus, that's the cluster initiatives and the centers of excellence. They are more long-term, and they are based on internationally outstanding research. We want strong links to small and large companies. Their aim is to create new companies, create new innovations, but innovations both in established companies but also spin-offs from their work. And we also want to see international collaboration, and they have to be internationally competitive, of course. So that's one of the things that the international evaluators evaluate before they are getting the first funding, but also how it improves during the funding period. And usually it's up to 10 years of funding.
And how do you evaluate the project?
So we monitor them, so they have to send in how many are taking part, what companies are taking part, the number of publications, is something getting patented, is there any prototypes, a lot of indicators. And those type of indicators are then put in the hands of the international panel evaluation team. And then they do interviews. So they come to Sweden and they travel around and meet. And it's a combination of having people who are more generally knowledgeable about research and innovation in combination with experts in the field. So is it biotechnology? We have a couple of biotech experts also. So a combination, and we want to have business people in combination with academic people also in the panel. So it's a huge endeavor to do this evaluation. It takes a long time, and we don't have that many. We have like 12, 15 initiatives running at the moment. And then they evaluate, and they give recommendations to VINNOVA, and they say that this is good, this is bad. This could be improved, this is something that they should work more on, we see this and that, and they also put in the international context.
Yeah, you are looking for internationally outstanding research record and strong link to small company. Is it possible?
Yep. But it's more or less of a challenge depending on the field. And I would say that many of those this is difficult for the small companies, because the small companies don't have the critical mass or the funding, or especially the high-tech companies, which is usually the case, to say that we will commit to this for 10 years. It's very difficult. So that's one of the results from the evaluation, that it is very difficult for the small companies. And usually the small companies that are involved and make this long-term commitment, they are very closely linked to the environment. They can be spin-offs from the environment, for instance. So this is a program that more contribute to the anchoring of the large established firms, I would say, for their competitiveness, their pipeline, but especially their recruitment. So that's one of we've done evaluations saying this, that one of the big positive sides of these type of centers of excellence is the education of very good researchers to join the companies, or to stay in academia and collaborate with the companies, and the anchoring of the companies in Sweden, since Sweden is a good environment to do R&D in when these type of initiatives and these type of environments exist. So it is, I would say that one of the results is that we don't see as many positive examples of when SMEs have benefited. Those that benefit are usually then intermediaries between academia and the big companies and spin-offs from the environment. Not always, but it's common.
Evaluation system for R&D project, it happens a lot that the project fails.
Yep.
The outcome does not meet the originally the purpose, objective, or total fail like that. So in that case, there's a criticism that government money, people's tax is wasted. And in many cases, the government officials or the supervisors are blamed for sort of do not do fulfilling the due diligence. So they are motivated to hide, right? The moral hazard happens. So would you say something about that?
This is a paradox, because on the one side, you want the taxpayers' money should generate innovation and growth. That's our task. It should, and if it doesn't, we've used it badly, one could say. On the other side, governmental funding should not go to something that the market does anyway. So we should only provide support if there's no one else that does it. So we should be in the high-risk side, really high-risk side, and then we must allow failures. So this is a paradox, and it's always a discussion, and that's why we have the impact assessments that are done totally externally, not by VINNOVA, but the monitoring, we collect the data. And of course, the cluster, for instance, the cluster initiatives, then they can tend to sort of overemphasize their role in a new innovation or their contribution to the system, and perhaps also hides some failures. That's a matter of fact. I mean, it's difficult to not have that. And what we try to do is that we try to I mean, we are 200 people, and we only have 2.2 billion Swedish crowns. But we, at VINNOVA, we try to be out there much more. We visit the projects, especially the big ones, and we do interviews with the individual players. So sometimes we meet them in a group, but we also do interviews with the companies. If the management of a cluster initiative says we are doing so much good, and we have helped all these companies, then perhaps we do a couple of interviews with the companies and ask them, what do you think their role was? Did it contribute? What's your view on what they contribute? So we try to sort of look behind what they send in the reports. But it is a struggle to get the objective picture of what's actually going on. Because of course the incentives of the project is to show success. Global Links is a program that supports cluster initiatives and centers of excellence to develop a strategy towards internationalization. And in those strategy processes then, we want them to become more proactive instead of reactive. They are also to take that into account. And I know in some of the cluster initiatives, for instance, that the cluster initiatives thought it would be very good if they could get a foreign direct investment by a competitor to one of the companies already here. And the company already here sort of said, no, don't. We don't want our competitor to be here and collaborate with the same type of researchers that we are collaborating with. Why are you doing this? So the sort of giving some small funding to these centers of excellence and the cluster initiatives to do a strategy process is one of the means we have to sort of get them to think proactively. Is it a good idea to bring the competitor here or not? And how should they then manage IP? How should they manage collaboration if they come to the conclusion that they should anyway, because it's a good economic and for growth and jobs and so on. So it's certainly an issue, and one of the conclusions when we had a government commission which I was working on developing a strategy towards how should Swedish governmental agencies work with China regarding research and innovation. And we then did interviews with many companies having experience of being in China. And some of the SMEs that had got a bit burned by the experience said that you shouldn't promote them to go to China if they're not ready. They can be naive, and you have to sort of so if you are going to promote those type of collaborations, you should also promote their knowledge in how to work in China, the IP issues, how to sort of make sure that your core competence is kept within the company and so on. So then we started some courses towards SMEs, drawing on the experiences of other companies who have made the trip, so to say. And so it's certainly true, and we try not to be naive in the way, but in the end, it's not VINNOVA's decision. It has to be a business decision. We cannot decide for the company applying if it is a good idea to go to China or if it is a good idea to collaborate with South Korean players or not. They have to decide, they have to make the decision. We can sort of only base our decision on the applications they send in. So we sort of make sure that they understand that it's not that we sort of sign off that it is a good idea because we cannot make the business judgment.
If some Korean company approached you and to make a joint research, then what kind of incentive they could expect from you compared to the other countries' R&D agencies?
We don't say upfront that you will get a tax subsidy or you will get this big research funding or that you will get a center of excellence if you come to Sweden. And this is a political decision. So it's more of showing our competitiveness, our research and innovation milieus, how competitive they are. That's what we sell. And we don't provide these economic incentives. And one of the discussions that have been made is that even though other countries provide this, how long-term benefits do you have from those type of initiatives, really? That's one of the arguments on the political side, that the benefits isn't long-term. If you look at, for instance, Ireland, they had very good conditions to attract big pharma, and they were very successful. And now big pharma is downsizing everywhere, and some of their units have been closed down, and some of their investments have been reduced quite a lot. So they sort of prepared their system for receiving all these big pharma investments, and now they see that it's changing. Puerto Rico was the same thing. They had a strong tax incentive. But then the big pharma companies realized that when the tax incentive stopped, it was still a problem with electricity and getting the right workers and so on and so forth. And they started to leave. But it is, I mean, that's vulnerable.
Innovation process, you said the culture of cooperation. What do you mean culture of cooperation?
So it has to do with the flat hierarchies in Sweden. We have a good system and good culture of collaborating, also between levels in the hierarchy, but also between disciplinaries, different disciplines, different education. I mean, the medical profession and the engineering profession. We have a lot of innovations in the medical technology field that are known worldwide, and that is based on collaboration between engineers and doctors.
What do you have in venture business promotion policy?
Sorry? In
Venture business promotion.
Startup business.
Startup business.
If you look at the Swedish system, we have a lot of startup companies. And And that's part of the fragmenting also, that there have been perhaps too much incentives to start new companies, to attract also funding from public players to spur commercialization. And then they can use the funding also for applied research. So if there's a researcher who wants more funding, perhaps it's good to start a company that can get the money, and the money then goes to academia. So we've had some systemic failure there before. But so we have a lot of startup companies based on academic ideas. And we have an increasingly professional and good support system surrounding the universities. And VINNOVA has had much programs in sort of getting those together, and education in training and getting them more professional, and sharing experiences and collaborating more across the country between these type of tech transfer offices and incubators and technology parks and so on. So there's a lot of emphasis in the system, both by VINNOVA but also by other agencies, to sort of raise the quality of the innovation support system and the regional innovation systems surrounding the universities. And also we try to keep track on how are they doing, the companies that are being spun off, the startup companies. So there are some reports on how they are developing, and the alumni of incubators and so on.
Do you have any linkage between your institute and the venture capital market?
Weak links, I would say. We sometimes use experts from the venture capital industry in our expert panels evaluating proposals. That's quite common. And we know also, we do studies that we sort of where we look at industries and we identify companies that are growing and so on, and we know that they use those type of reports and use that type of information that we have and provide them and give publicly on our website to identify companies that they want to invest in. And we also know from studies that statistically it's easier. It seems like it's easier to get venture capital if you've been at VINNOVA also and been successful at VINNOVA. So being part of the VINNOVA portfolio and having gone through the evaluation at VINNOVA is sort of a quality assurance when you go to venture capital. It's a good thing. But it's not that we sort of collaborate and say that we take these steps and then you can take over, or no, nothing like that.
The most important factor in innovation success in Sweden?
I think collaboration.
Collaboration.
Yeah. I think collaboration in the innovation system, and also, as we have talked about today, not being naive and knowing about the global context, I mean the competitive situation. So I think collaboration and knowledge about the global context is...
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you all.